Just wanted to give everyone a rundown of my worldview as an anarchist or an anarchist leaning libertarian. This is how I would teach anarchism if I were given the opportunity, or if I had to teach it concisely, quickly to a beginner. So the state is intrinsically violent. The state is defined as an entity capable of wielding a credible monopoly on the use of legitimate violence within a given territory to defend its goals of usually creating an ordered society of some sort. So, but the word violence is in there. And so it requires violence, the legitimization of violence, which is messed up, territorialism, which is something that wolves do. Like, I have a neighbor who lives below me. There's no reason he couldn't be a member of a totally different government, but we're on the same territory. That means that statism, which involves territory, is fundamentally flawed, or if not flawed, then at least unnecessary. So we have to find alternatives to monopoly, alternatives to violence, alternatives to territorialism, if we're ever, alternatives to the legitimacy and the legitimization of violence, if we're ever going to find our way out of this monopolistic violent statism that makes us compete over territory and compete over resources when we don't want to and usually don't have to. One of the most important ways to diminish the violence of the state is to embrace administration of the law and administration of contracts, private contracts made between consenting people, without the state to coerce or pressure them into making any decisions and manipulate and intimidate and all those things that are aggravating factors for when you abuse and assault someone. So the state can kidnap us, they can legally murder, torture people, large numbers of people, and they can just legalize it before or sometimes after the fact by calling it war, calling it, they call it theft, taxes. Now people say taxes aren't theft. It's like, okay, just because I'm using your money and spending it on what I think is a good purpose, because I think you would think it's a good purpose, but I'm not consulting you, like, no, it has to be voluntary. Abortion's a very controversial thing. If only half of the people in the country want to fund it, then they should all join into a voluntary contribution fund that's preferably is not state operated, and they should pay for people's abortions, whoever wants the money. So here's the thing. If you involve people who don't like what you're doing with the money in your business and you ask for their money, they're not going to want you to do just whatever you want with their money. Use your own money and you have freedom. As you may be aware, there was an opinion that leaked recently from the Supreme Court indicating that Roe v. Wade may be about to be overturned. Roe v. Wade is known as the law of the land, in terms of it being the most important Supreme Court case or decision that's still standing concerning abortion at the federal level. But that's not true. There was a later Supreme Court case called Casey versus Planned Parenthood. And it didn't overturn Roe v. Wade, but it overturned a small part of it, I think, and it kind of specified it. See, Roe v. Wade sets out this situation in which states can have regulations about health qualities, health standards, if someone's going to get an abortion in the second trimester. So without Roe v. Wade, that would be what they call a state's issue again. But really, it's not strictly a state's issue. It's the states or the people. See, the 10th Amendment says that every issue, every power not delegated to the federal government, like retirement, health, environment, and abortion, is supposed to be, it's a problem that's solved by the states or the people. It doesn't say states, it says the states or the people. So in each state, the people get to decide how much power they want their government to have over that issue. So there'll be some states that outlaw abortion completely. There'll be some states with strict rules, and there'll be some states with permissive rules, as it would be on every issue if the federal government didn't just tell us what to do all the time on every issue, instead of just the three it's supposed to: money, mail, and military. So let me just throw in my opinion. First of all, you might want to check out Jimmy Dore, because he's saying the Democrats are allowing this to happen. They're allowing Republicans to overturn Roe versus Wade. And They're doing that because they want to run on it. They want to be able to run on it in 2024, saying, "Look what Republicans did. They took away your abortion rights." It's like, well, you kind of let them do it, and you didn't explain to us how abortion law works. Abortion is supposed to be. It's not mentioned in the Constitution. Health isn't even mentioned in the Constitution. Reproductive health isn't mentioned in the Constitution. Condoms, like, this is not supposed to be a federal issue, and that's why we're fighting about it so much. We shouldn't have an entire nation of 330 million people fighting about abortion. You see, murder, people say abortion is murder, and maybe it is, but even if it is, like, that's a right-wing standpoint, and it should fit with the standpoint that the states are supposed to punish murder, because there's nothing in the Constitution saying the federal government is supposed to punish murder. So when I say the Constitution doesn't say that the federal government has to prosecute murder, I mean murders that happen within the 50 states. I'm saying that if Republicans want to say that abortion is murder, then they have to let the states decide whether and how to prosecute that as murder in the states. Unless it's abortion where the person traveled across state lines in order to get an abortion. That is potentially, if it's a minor, it's a potential violation of the Mann Act. If it's an adult, it's potentially federal jurisdiction. So I could see abortion not being strictly a state's issue, because there are some legitimate federal territories that are sovereign areas of the federal government that they get to rule over. But anyway, Jimmy Dore is basically saying that the Democrats are allowing abortion rights, quote unquote, to be taken away. There never really was a right. There wasn't a positive law right, at least. There wasn't a right enshrined into law. And Jimmy Dore is saying the Democrats are allowing abortion to be basically prohibited, or whatever you want to call it, downgraded in legal status. He's saying they're allowing that to happen because they've failed to codify abortion rights into the law by having an act of Congress, or I would say a constitutional amendment. See, here's the thing about people who talk about the Constitution all the time, like me. We don't all think the Constitution is perfect, and we don't all think it doesn't need to be changed. Very few of us, and very few Americans, think the Constitution is perfect. When we praise or support the Constitution, what we're really praising, at least, all of us, maybe some of us actually do love the Constitution, but when we support the Constitution, we're saying we support constitutional processes. We support the rule of law instead of the rule of the mob, or people having a majority to vote other people's rights away. We want to enshrine your rights in the law so that people can't do away with them, so that fleeting majorities can't do away with them. So if you're going to change the Constitution significantly, you can do that. You just have to do it through constitutional processes. See, abortion was never delegated as a national issue to the federal government. So before you have an act of Congress, you would have to have a constitutional amendment making abortion a national issue. You can't have national laws on what is not yet a national issue. So if you want to have national environmental laws, Social Security is unconstitutional. All laws that are currently being enforced that are unconstitutional, that's illegal. Those laws are not supposed to come into existence in the first place. So abortion is a personal issue. It's between a woman or the family and the doctor. Government should not get involved at any level, in my opinion. Podcaster Tim Pool said recently, "I'm pro-choice but not pro-abortion." I agree with that more or less. And what I think he means by that is that he is pro-choice, he favors some abortions, but he is not enthusiastically pro-abortion in terms of what women say, let's have free abortion on demand. It's like, free abortion? What, you just expect the doctor to do it? Because here's the thing, if you want to use the government, if you want to have unconstitutional measures to make people do labor for free, like, that's not okay. That violates the Fifth Amendment takings clause, and it violates the 13th Amendment freedom from involuntary servitude. You don't have the right to make people work for you for free. But hold on, right-wingers. Doctors take an oath, the Hippocratic Oath, to provide people medical treatment regardless of their ability to pay. So you think if you could enforce those contracts, enforce that oath as if it's a contract, the Hippocratic Oath, then you could make doctors work for free, or at least the ones that choose to. That's something I've proposed. On the other hand, you could argue that that's bullshit because abortion is not health services, it's killing of a patient. So that aside, I want you to look into the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment is part of federal abortion law. I don't even know what it's an amendment to exactly, but it was Henry Hyde, Republican from Illinois, about 25 years ago. They try to pretend it's this pro-life piece of legislation, and it is and it isn't. It blocks certain types of abortions from being funded federally, but it still allows other types of abortions to be funded federally. I think it's in cases of rape and incest and danger to the mother's life. And maybe you support abortions in those cases. I do in most. But you got to understand, like, the Hyde Amendment has set up the situation in which if you're pro-abortion or pro-choice, you automatically support federal funding of any and every abortion forever, tax everyone across the country to pay for everyone else's abortion across the country. It's like, I'm just pro-choice in the sense that I don't want the law to interfere with anyone's ability to get an abortion, at least not after a point of viability, which is its whole own issue, because people say viability can be 6 months. It's actually, babies have survived down to 4 months. So viability is its own thing. But what I want you to pay attention to is this politicization of the abortion issue. Like, there are Republicans who pretend they're pro-life, but they still support federal funding of abortions in certain cases. We need to talk about that. That's stupid and it doesn't make sense. So just to wrap up, again, why I support abortion in the sense that government shouldn't interfere with your ability to get one, but I'm not so enthusiastically pro-abortion that I think everyone should be taxed to pay for the abortions of strangers who live on the other side of the country. I mean, it should be obvious. One, it's not constitutional. There'd have to be an amendment allowing exclusive national control over reproductive health. We don't have that yet. Second, I don't want to enable or legitimize the evil, violent, terroristic, monopolistic state that legitimizes violence. I don't want to legitimize that horrible monster by letting it take my money and then spend it on something that you want, a nice gift for yourself. I don't want to make the evil state look good. And I don't want to politicize abortion. If they politicize abortion, I mean, we're already voting based on abortion, a lot of people, but they're going to want to know our opinion more if they politicize abortion. So I'm trying to keep my opinion out of it. You know, if you want me to pay for your abortion, you're going to hear my opinion. So I explained earlier that doctors take an oath to provide people with free treatment regardless of their ability to pay. And obviously most people who are pro-abortion want abortion on demand. They don't want to get abortion that way. That's something that only I talk about. So most of the people want the government to make doctors do abortions. And they want free abortions. It's like, hello, that's involuntary servitude. Leftist, you supposedly anti-slavery Democrat who, lost the Civil War. The Democrats were Confederates. They were pro-slavery. And they're still pro-slavery because they want to make doctors do abortions. You can't make doctors do abortions and then say you're against slavery and against police brutality and against keeping black people in chains. You're fucking hypocrites. If you want to make someone do some labor, pay them or negotiate or make a contract. Half of the people who would have been born, if not for abortion, would have been males, would have been men. That's why men have the right to speak up about abortion, because those aborted fetuses are dead. They will never have the right to speak. And they probably wanted to be alive. They would have wanted to be alive. So another reason that men have the right to speak about abortion is because we're being taxed to fund it. Now, we are being taxed to fund it in the case of like rape and incest and danger of health to the mother, but still, we have the right to talk about that. We have the right to negotiate with other voters and taxpayers in this country about what those conditions are going to be if we're going to be expected to fund it. Now, if we're not going to be expected to fund it, then we can stop politicizing abortion, and then truly men will not have a say in it because it won't affect them, because they won't be being taxed for it. See, how could you say I don't have the right to talk about it when I'm being taxed? I have a right to negotiate on what those conditions are going to be as long as my money is being taxed. If you want me to shut up, you have to stop taking my money. That's all I'm trying to say. So I want you to try to imagine the line of thinking that an enthusiastically pro-abortion person, the free abortion on demand, paid for by everyone taxpayers' money, that kind of pro-choice. Try to wrap your mind around what they're saying when not that every one of them wants men to shut up, but those who do say men don't have a right to talk about abortion, try to think about the reasoning here. It's really hard to grapple with because they're saying, even though you're being taxed, you don't have a right to talk about this. And when you confront them about this, you say, like, you're spending my taxpayer money, like that's mine. I get a right to talk about it. And they'll just say things like, oh, you were already taxed. You don't get to object. We already took your money. Now it's ours to talk about, which really means it's theirs. It's just you don't get to talk about it because we already took your money. That's like if a gang of people rob you and you ask for your money back or part of your money back, and they say, no, we already took it from you. We're the ones that get to decide, but you're the one who gets to. See, there's the inclusive we and the exclusive we. The gang wants to exclude you from their we. Their we doesn't include you. So that's what you're dealing with anytime you deal with the state. We could have democracy or a public sector or even socialism without the monopolistic, violent, terroristic state that legitimizes its own violence. But few people are ready to talk about that. Here's the thing that drives me crazy. A lot of people who debate libertarians, like people from the left or Democrats, they'll immediately try to debate us on like, oh, you want private armies? How are you going to have private armies? It's like, you're not ready to debate us on private armies. You guys can barely wrap your minds around consent, okay? So don't take people's money and don't commit acts of violence against them, okay?